In today's video, we're going to talk about a lens which you might have never heard of. The first unique feature about this lens that it comes with a massive 400mm telephoto range. Second, despite of having this massive telephoto range, this lens is very compact. Third, it supports most of the camera brands available in the market. And the last and the most important one, it is pricing. You can get this lens for approximately $300. So the lens we're talking about here is from Tokina and it's called SZX Super 400mm Telephoto Lens. If you use this lens on a full frame camera, you will get equivalent to 400mm telephoto range. That being said, if you use this lens on a camera which has an APS-C sensor, for example here like this one, Sony a6400, you will get a massive 600mm of telephoto range. By the way, if you are interested in this lens, you will find all the link in the description of this video and you can go and check out this lens. So in this video, we are going to explore this lens and we'll learn about its weaknesses and strong points, as well as we'll see how this lens perform on field along with some photos and video samples taken from this lens. And trust me, this lens has some very unique characteristics which you might have never seen till now. So make sure to watch this video till the end. And before we move forward, if you like this video, please press the like button, and if you like this kind of content, please subscribe to my channel. So first, let's start with the design and the build quality of this lens. First and most important thing first, it is a manual focus lens and there is no autofocus of any kind. Now coming back to its build quality, this lens is made up of solid metal. Not only just the lens body, but lens hood is also made up of metal, which shows that this lens comes with a top-notch build quality. If we talk about the weight, the total weight of this lens is 340 grams. That includes the mount as well. And if you are interested in using any kind of filter with this lens, for example CPL filter, UV filter or ND filter, so the filter thread size for this lens is 67 mm. Now if you look at this lens closely, you will realize that this lens looks slightly different from other lenses. And the main reason for that is its front element as well as the back mount. I'm sure you might have heard of this Hubble telescope, which helps us in capturing the high resolution, high quality photo of distant galaxies, stars and planets. The front element of this lens is closely resembles to the Hubble telescope, and it should be because this lens was designed on the same principle of Hubble telescope. And that's how they managed to keep this lens small and lightweight while still providing us a super telephoto zoom range. Now talking about its back, which looks quite unique. The back of this lens is a camera mount which can be detached, which means you can unscrew the back from the lens body like this. And the biggest benefit of this kind of design is that when you plan to change your camera, for example, currently you are shooting on Canon or Nikon and you are planning to go to Sony or Panasonic, all you have to do is to just get a new back. You don't need to sell off your lens because of the mount mismatch. You just have to get a compatible mount and you are good. In my opinion, it's a very creative thinking by Tokina's design team. So now before I show you a small B-roll sequence which I created using this lens and my Sony a6400 camera, let's look at some strong points of this lens. And the first point I would like to talk about here is its size and compactness. If you compare this lens with the typical 400mm zoom range lens available in the market, you will quickly realize that the size and the weight of this lens is a huge advantage. However, I would also like to highlight this point that the lenses we are comparing with, they might perform better optically and they will definitely come with the autofocus system. But if you are someone who's just starting out and normally during the start we don't have such kind of budget that we can afford a good quality super telephoto lens, and you are someone who's working on a personal project but don't want to carry a super heavy camera lens combo setup on the streets, that's where this lens shines. The next strong point of this lens is obviously its zoom range. Even though it's compact and lightweight, but this lens provides 400mm of super telephoto range. And I am here using my a6400, which is an APS-C camera. So in my particular camera, it gives me a 600mm of massive super telephoto range, which is amazing. And this kind of range not only give you a longer reach, but it can open up a door of completely different perspective. Apart from that, this lens is a very good contender for macro photography. The close focusing distance of this lens is 1.15 meter. And when your lens have a ability to go to that close to your subject while still retaining the 400mm telephoto range, you can create some amazing extreme close-up and macro shots. Next and the last strong point of this lens is its bokeh style. This lens creates very unique kind of bokeh. It will be a ring shaped bokeh which you have not seen in many lenses. Now let's see the B-roll sequence I've created with this lens, and in that sequence you will also see some photo samples so that you can understand what kind of quality this lens can produce. And also after this sequence I'm going to talk about the weaknesses of this lens, and those weaknesses are massive. So I want you to stick around and don't leave this video, because if you invest in this lens without knowing about its weaknesses, it's gonna be a huge mistake. Alright guys, we are back. And as I mentioned that this lens can create a very different perspective, you might have noticed it. Now let's discuss the weakness of this lens. And the first one and the biggest one is its fixed locked aperture. This lens comes with a fixed f8 aperture. When I say fixed, it means that it cannot go up and it cannot go down. Now f8 aperture by default provide us a darker exposure. And if you are using this lens during the evening time or in overcast days, you might end up getting a darker image, or you might have to bump up your ISO significantly. That being said, if you are using a full frame camera, and all the full frame cameras these days perform really well in low light scenario, if you are a full frame camera owner, then you don't need to worry about this. But if you are using an APS-C camera like I'm using, then you might find it challenging, especially when you try to use this lens during the low light scenario like evening or overcast day. The next weakness of this lens is the stabilization. 400mm zoom range is an extremely sensitive range. Even if you feel that your camera is stable, you will still get some kind of shakes and bumps because of the wind. So you need to make sure that your camera is very stable. Now if you are using a camera which comes with an inbuilt stabilization, like lots of modern days camera come with the IPS system, then you are safe to some extent. But if you are using a camera which doesn't have an inbuilt stabilization, like my camera, I'm using Sony A6400 and it doesn't have any IPS, it's going to be really tough. You can't shoot handheld. Even for photos you will have to use a tripod, which again defeats the purpose of this lens. This lens was created compact and lightweight so that people can easily carry it. If we have to use a separate tripod so that we can stabilize this lens, again this implies to the people who owns a slightly older camera model. All the people who owns newer camera, most of these cameras have inbuilt stabilization, and I think you are safe there. Let's address the elephant in the room, and that is sharpness. Most of the super telephoto lens produce slightly soft result, especially if you compare that with a proper prime lens. I did a test here. I used Sony's 55 to 210 telephoto lens, and I just try to match the framing as well as exposure and everything. Now here, this first video was shot with Tokina. Aperture is fixed f8. I used ISO 1000, and you can see what kind of sharpness and quality you are getting with this lens. The next clip is shot with Sony's 55 to 210 lens. I try to match the frame, and I used the f8 aperture and ISO 1000. This clip looks slightly brighter, but as far as the sharpness go, both these lenses look same to me. So in terms of sharpness in the 4K video, I think both the lenses look almost similar. Here's the photo comparison, and you can see on the left there is Tokina photo, on the right it's Sony photo. There is not a drastic difference in terms of sharpness. In fact, I can't make it out which one is more sharper here. And the last weakness of this lens is going to be the manual focus. The 400mm range looks very attractive, especially to people who wants to pursue wildlife photography. Now In wildlife photography, if your subject is stable, you can still use this lens and create some amazing photos and videos. But if your subject is moving and you're trying to track that subject, that is almost impossible. I'm not saying that you can't do that, but it's going to be very very challenging to track a subject with a manual focus lens. Although all the modern camera provide all kind of focus peaking and magnification option, which makes the manual focusing much more easy, but still you can't track a moving subject, especially a fast moving one. So now to conclude everything, I would say that if you learn to work with the weaknesses of this lens and you find a solution, this lens can produce some pretty unique result, very creative result. And this lens can be very useful, especially if you are planning to do a wildlife photography. You can also use this to create portraits, like couple portraits, pre-wedding shots, this, with the compressed background and all. This is a perfect lens for street photography where you don't want to reveal yourself and disturb the subject. For that, this particular lens is very good. You can also use this lens for astrophotography because that is the kind of range we need for that kind of photography. All in all, it's a good lens, especially in this kind of budget. It's not a sponsor video, guys. Tokina did not paid me for this video. They just provided me this lens and they wanted me to test this lens and share my honest opinion with you guys. So that's what I did. If you know any other lens which can, provides similar capability in similar size of form factor and in similar kind of price bracket, please do comment below, let me know, and I would like to test that as well. And that's it for today's video, and I'll see you soon. Till then, you take care. Bye bye.